Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. It was July 23, 1967, when Detroit police raided an illegal after-hours club on 12th Street in the heart of the African-American community. With tensions between blacks and police already really high, the city erupted into 4 days of rioting, unlike anything this country has ever seen. The events of 1967 changed Detroit, and they changed the region. 2 years from now, the Detroit Historical Society and its partners will commemorate the 50th anniversary of the rebellion with an unprecedented community-wide project called Detroit 1967, Looking Back to Move Forward. The exhibition will include interactive displays, oral histories, and community conversations. Here to talk more about the project is the Executive Director and CEO of the Detroit Historical Society, Bob Burry. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Stephen. Great to be here.
So this is a really important marker in this city. Tell me why, though. Why is it really important at 50 to look back to something that a lot of people still think of as very divisive and a destructive force in this community?
Right. Well, I think you just said two key words. One is that many people still think about it, and many people still think about it as being divisive. And, you know, we took this opportunity to, as we looked at this upcoming 50-year commemoration, we could do a couple of things. One, we could just do an exhibit and be done with it. We could kind of cross our fingers and hope people forgot about it. Yeah. Or we could approach it in a really big way. Yeah. And to make sure that the reporting that we did and the project that we initiated was inclusive, comprehensive, and represented all the facts and all the various points of view that make up the community. Right.
And so tell me about how this has come together. I know you and I have talked many times about the plans and how you will commemorate this in the sort of appropriate way, which is to try to put it into context, try to explain some of the things that might linger from it, and not gloss over that history.
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody has a perspective on this, but two things that everyone agrees with is that it affected everyone in the metro community, that it was arguably one of the most significant historical events in the last 100 years, and third is that there's still wounds that are still remaining. Sure. The consequences are still there. So we wanted to do a couple of things, and actually there's a fourth thing. One is that, you know, if you don't look at what you've done yesterday or 50 years ago or 100 years ago, perhaps you're destined to repeat some of those same mistakes. Sure. So our thinking here is, let's collect the information from a wide variety of sources. People that were on the street, in the action, people like Deputy Mayor Ike McKinnon, people like Judge Damon Keith, but also people that lived in the neighborhoods, or used to live in the neighborhoods, sure, and are still around to share those reflections, but also to talk to people who weren't, quite frankly, born yet. Yeah. And what did it mean for their lives? And what does it mean for their lives going forward and perhaps their kids' lives?
Yeah. I was going to say, I was not born yet in 1967, and of course, my children who are growing up in Detroit today were not around. One of the things you're trying to do is put it in context for us and to talk about what does it mean today and how do we get past some of those wounds that still exist.
Exactly, and what lessons did we learn? How do we move forward? And some of the photographs that you'll see associated with really highlight the really bad stuff. And I'm not suggesting that we're minimizing it. I'm not suggesting that we just need to get over it and forget about it. But what did we learn from it to move on? So the three pieces of the project, if you will, are collecting those oral and video histories, which take me an hour to tell you how incredibly interesting and fascinating that is. Yeah. The second piece is an exhibit that will open in the fall of 2016 at the Detroit Historical Museum, which will be reflective, which will be personal, which will be very forward-looking about what did we learn for this, for Detroit and for America.
And why fall of 2016?
Well, just to kind of be ready. Yeah. In anticipation of 2017. And you mentioned in your intro about partners. Yeah. As part of opening the exhibit, we'll really be kicking in some of our partners like the Charles Wright Museum and the New Detroit and the Diversity Roundtable and the Jewish Community Center and the Grosse Pointe War Memorial. People across the region that say, yeah, we want to be part of this because it's a regional story. So how do you bring it to the community and not just reiterate the story, but perhaps help communicate some of the lessons that we've learned about self-esteem and leadership and conflict resolution and how we might do things differently going forward.
Yeah. One of the things that I find really interesting about this project is that narrative piece, people telling their stories about where they were and what they were doing at the time of the riots. And I think one of the stories that stuck with me the most that I've heard is Ike McKinnon, who's the deputy mayor, who was an officer on the police department at that time, and has a really harrowing story about an encounter he had with other officers who tried to assault him and tried to kill him. These are stories that I think a lot of people haven't heard, number one, but I think the sort of shocking nature of them will be pretty profound for people who've not really given a lot of thought to the events of that week and what they've meant over this period of time.
Right, and I think what Ike's story, which is you and I know, he was shot at by white officers.
Yeah.
Really show that, it wasn't just that week.
Yeah.
There were a whole lot of things, and we would suggest, and the exhibit will demonstrate, since probably the early 1900s, that helped build up to what really was encapsulated in that week of terror in the city.
Yeah.
The other key thing is Ike's story is great, but we've collected a lot of other really interesting stories from people you and your viewers may know, but people you've never heard of.
Right.
And so there's an opportunity for people to submit their stories. We have a website called Detroit1967.org and a phone number of 313-885-1967 where you can call in with your story.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have done that. And we're also doing a series of workshops and opportunities at the museums, both of our museums, where people can come in and sit down with one of our folks and tell your story.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that there's going to be some national attention on Detroit during this window, and of course the exhibit makes that even more likely. Talk though about how all of this fits in your view with the sort of emerging discussions about race in this country. I mean, I feel like we're at a really particular moment with that in this country right now, with some of the things that are happening and some of the things that people are insisting that we confront. It seems like that dovetails nicely with looking back at 1967.
Well, I think it does, and I think one of the criticisms that you hear in all the discussion about race is these days is that where is the discussion? Where is the proactive effort to address it in a very constructive and proactive way? And that's exactly what this project will do. And this project was contemplated long before the recent rather unfortunate events that have happened around the country.
Sure.
But this is an opportunity to control the narrative of Detroit, of our community. And in my view, it's an opportunity to, I don't want to say control or mastermind it, but collectively in an inclusive way, control that narrative and demonstrate to our community most importantly, but I think beyond nationally, that Detroit, once again, is going to take a leadership position.
Yeah.
And take a leadership role and really sharing with the rest of the country in a way that I think could be a model, a national model, of how to proactively address the issue. Not unlike how we address bankruptcy.
Right.
Let's let's come together and let's get it done and let's move forward.
Yeah, that inclusive part that you're talking about, that's a big part of what you guys are doing. You really have reached out to I think, everybody who either had anything to do with this or even just had a thought about this. That exercise alone, I think, has value.
It's been great, and I'll tell you, the programs that we've talked about, is using existing channels, existing community organizations that reach people is going to be really important, including your next guest on the show.
Right.
Where we were waiting.
Franklin Wright.
Franklin Wright is another opportunity for us to work with a well-established, respected community group like them to help get the word out and help the message and the healing and the communication and the understanding, not just maybe make you and me feel better, but the broader community if you live in the city or if you live in West Bloomfield.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so 2 years from now, we'll be there and we'll be talking about how this all unfolded.
We'll be there, but the heavy lifting's going on now, and a big part of that is collecting those stories.
Yeah.
And we're so pleased to be working with so many academic scholars on making sure that we're telling the story in a positive, positively accurate way. I don't want to say a Pollyanna-ish way, because it's not a Pollyanna
Right.
story.
Truth is the thing that I think is your guiding principle here.
Right.
We've got to be honest about what was going on in the city, what people's frustrations were, and how they continue today as a result.
Right, and I think one of those last things that, ignorance often causes bad behavior.
Yeah.
And if we are able to use the historical facts, the story in a comprehensive, productive, useful way, and get the facts out there, I think we've accomplished a lot in working with our partners like New Detroit and the Charles Wright and Diversity Roundtable, and people that have dedicated their lives and mission to this. I think it's a great combination to move it forward.
All right, Bob Burry, Detroit Historical Society, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Stephen. Great to be here.